Formula One is facing something it has never faced before. Its own drivers are turning against it. Not one. Not two. All of them. Verstappen says it doesn't feel like Formula One. Hamilton says it's too complex to even follow. Alonso says the driver doesn't even matter anymore. That's not criticism. That's a full-blown revolt. And it's happening for one reason. Cars are now slowing down, on full throttle. Losing up to 50 kilometers per hour, in the middle of a straight, with no warning. Which means one driver is still accelerating, while the car ahead suddenly becomes a moving obstacle. That gap can exceed 40 kilometers per hour, in seconds. That's not racing. That's a serious risk. And it already led to a near disaster that should have never happened. Now the FIA is in emergency meetings. The paddock is divided. And the backlash is exploding. But here's the part that changes everything. This wasn't a surprise. The drivers warned them. Before the season even started. And they were ignored. So now the real question is no longer what's going wrong. It's how Formula One allowed itself to reach this point. At first, it didn't feel like a crisis. It felt like progress. A new era for Formula One. More advanced. More efficient. More aligned with the future. That was the promise. An engine built on perfect balance. 50% electric power. 50% combustion. A bold vision that everyone believed in. Teams supported it. Manufacturers invested in it. The FIA pushed it forward with confidence. And on paper, it looked flawless. But Formula One is not decided on paper. It's decided on track. At full speed. Under pressure. With no room for error. And that's where everything started to fall apart. Because while the electric power increased massively, the battery stayed exactly the same. Same capacity. Same limitations. But now, under extreme demand. That single decision created a system that cannot sustain itself. At full deployment, the battery drains in seconds. Around 8 to 10 seconds, and it's gone. Completely empty. And when that happens, the car changes instantly. Not gradually. Not predictably. Instantly. The system switches from delivering power to recovering energy. Even if the driver is still flat on the throttle. That moment is where everything breaks. Because from that point on, the driver is no longer in control. The system takes over. And that creates something Formula One has never had before. Unpredictable performance in the middle of a straight. Think about that. A driver is pushing at maximum speed. And suddenly, the car stops responding the way it should. Not because of skill. Not because of setup. Because the energy is gone. And now the car is trying to recharge itself while still racing. That's the core problem. But here's where it becomes even more uncomfortable. Drivers are already adapting. Not by going faster, but by going slower. They're lifting off early, on straights, before the braking zone, not to prepare for the corner, but to recharge the battery before the system forces them to slow down even more. So they slow down, to avoid being slowed down harder later. That contradiction is the clearest sign something is fundamentally broken, and it changes everything about the sport. Because this is no longer about pushing to the limit. It's about managing a system, managing energy, managing timing. Managing something invisible, but decisive. And when that happens, the essence of Formula One starts to disappear. But this is still only the beginning. Because everything becomes far more dangerous the moment another car is involved. Everything changes the moment another car is involved. Because this system doesn't fail equally. It creates imbalance. One driver exits a corner with a full battery. Another exits with almost nothing left. Same track. Same lap. Completely different performance. At first, it looks normal. Both cars accelerate. Both drivers commit. But then, it happens. One car keeps pulling. The other suddenly stops gaining speed. Not gradually. Instantly. That's super clipping. And in that exact moment, the gap between them doesn't just grow. It explodes. We're talking about more than 40 kilometers per hour, in seconds. Now imagine you're the driver behind. You're flat out. Focused. Everything feels under control. Until suddenly, it isn't. The car in front is slower than expected. Much slower. And there is no warning. No signal. No pattern. No way to predict it. Just a car, losing speed where it shouldn't. That's not racing. That's survival. And this is exactly what turned frustration into anger. Because drivers are no longer just complaining. They're reacting. They've seen what can happen. Japan. High-speed section. A car ahead enters super clipping. Loses speed instantly. The car behind arrives at full pace. The closing speed is massive. There is almost no time to react. The driver behind moves offline, avoids contact. By meters. Just meters. And that moment changes everything. Because now, it's real. This is not theory. This is not simulation. This is happening on track. And this is the part the FIA didn't fully account for. Not how the system works alone, but how it behaves in traffic. Because Formula One is not about driving in isolation. It's about fighting. Wheel to wheel. Corner to corner. And that requires one critical element. Trust. Drivers push to the limit because they trust what the car will do. But now, that trust is gone. Because the car can change behavior without warning. Not based on driver input. Not based on skill. Based on energy. Invisible. Unpredictable. Constantly changing. And when that trust disappears, everything becomes dangerous. Drivers hesitate. Or worse, they commit and the car does something unexpected. That's when mistakes happen. That's when accidents happen. And that's when the sport crosses a line it was never supposed to cross. But here's what makes this even more explosive. This wasn't a surprise. Every driver at the top level saw this coming. They warned about it. Before the season even started. They described exactly this scenario. And still, nothing changed. Which is why the reaction now is different. This isn't normal frustration. This is anger. Because the drivers are not just dealing with a bad system. They're dealing with a system that they were forced to race after warning it was dangerous. And now there's a question that no one inside Formula One can avoid anymore. If the drivers don't trust the cars, how can anyone trust the sport? The FIA had no choice. Not anymore. Not after the data. Not after the near disaster. Not after every top driver said the same thing. So they did something Formula One rarely does. They reacted. Emergency meetings were called. Teams were summoned. Engine manufacturers were forced into urgent discussions. And for the first time, the FIA stopped defending the rules and started trying to fix them. That shift alone tells you everything. Because you don't move that fast, unless something is already out of control. Now multiple solutions are being discussed behind closed doors. Some are quick fixes. Others would completely change how these cars behave. But here's the problem. None of them solve everything. Every solution comes with a cost. One of the most urgent ideas is simple. Remove the advantage of lifting off. Right now, drivers gain more energy by lifting than by staying flat on the throttle. Which is why they're doing something that looks completely wrong. They're slowing down on purpose. So the fix? Make energy recovery the same, whether the driver lifts or not. Take away the incentive. Force the cars to behave normally on straights again. It sounds simple, but it doesn't fix the core issue. Because super clipping still exists. It just becomes slightly less extreme. Another solution goes deeper. Reduce the electric power when the battery gets too low. Stretch the energy. Avoid the sudden drop in speed. Make everything more predictable. But again, there's a trade-off. Less peak power. Less acceleration. Less of that raw intensity that defines Formula One. And suddenly, the conversation changes. Because now the question isn't how to make the cars faster. It's how to make them safer. And that shift is everything. Because once safety becomes the priority, it means performance has already failed. And that's why the FIA is in real trouble. Not just because something is broken, but because fixing it changes what Formula One is supposed to be. Make it safer, and it becomes slower. Keep it fast, and it stays unpredictable. There is no perfect solution, only compromise. And here's the hardest truth to accept. This cannot be fully fixed this season. Because the real problem is built into the design. The batteries are too small. The power demand is too high. That balance is locked. And you can't redesign the foundation in the middle of a championship. So what happens now? The season continues. With patches. With adjustments. With temporary fixes trying to control a much bigger problem. Which means every race from this point forward is not just competition. It's a live experiment. Drivers adapting. Engineers reacting. The FIA trying to stay one step ahead. But maybe they're already one step behind. And that leads to the question no one inside the sport wants to answer. Is the FIA still controlling Formula One? Or is Formula One now reacting to a mistake that's too big to fix? And this is where everything becomes bigger than just a bad regulation. Because now, it's not just drivers who are frustrated. It's the entire foundation of Formula One being questioned. Behind closed doors, something has already changed. The conversation is no longer about fixing the season. It's about escaping it. Teams are no longer asking how to improve performance. They're asking how to prevent this from ever happening again. Because once drivers start saying the car doesn't feel like a Formula One car, once they admit they are not in control, once they openly question the rules, you are no longer dealing with a technical issue. You are dealing with a credibility problem. And that's far more dangerous. Because Formula One doesn't just sell speed. It sells belief. The belief that these are the fastest drivers, in the fastest cars, pushing to the absolute limit. But right now, that belief is starting to crack. Fans are seeing cars lift on straights. They're seeing speed disappear, for no visible reason. They're hearing drivers talk about managing energy, instead of attacking corners. And once that image settles, it's very hard to erase. Because perception spreads faster than any car on track. And this is where 2027 suddenly becomes everything. Not just another regulation change. A reset. A chance to rebuild what this season is breaking. Because there are already clear lessons. If you increase electric power, the battery must increase with it. If systems become more complex, they must remain predictable. And most importantly, the driver must always stay in control. Because the moment the system overrides the driver, Formula One stops being Formula One. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even if 2027 fixes everything, even if the cars become predictable again, even if drivers regain full control, there is one question that will not disappear. How did this happen in the first place? Because this wasn't hidden. The data existed. The warnings were clear. The drivers spoke out early. And still, the sport moved forward. Which means the real problem is not just the regulation. It's the process behind it, the decisions that allowed it, the system that approved it. And if that doesn't change, this won't be the last time Formula One finds itself here, at the edge, trying to fix something that should have never been broken. And that's why this moment matters more than any race result. Because this is not just about engines, not just about rules. It's about whether Formula One can still control its own future, or if it has already lost control to a system that was supposed to define it.